Ming and I are members of the Dingke clan, and we have always had a good relationship. On the 20th anniversary, a young and beautiful girl came to my clinic and said that she was pregnant with my husband's child. Ming said that he was her first man and was responsible for her. I raised my hands in favor. I want to see. He is a sperm patient. Where did the child come from? 1. The girl in front of her is young and full of collagen. She introduced herself as a student of Ming. I opened a routine examination list and asked her to draw blood to determine the number of weeks of pregnancy first, and then check the fetal heart and embryo with B ultrasound. After the results came out, she queued up to build a file. After thinking about it, he couldn't help but tell her, although college students can get married now, it's better to focus on their studies when they are students. The girl opposite looked up at me with disdain in her eyes. Dr. Chun, I think it's more important for me to give birth to a child at this stage. I was clear. I didn't say anything more. I put my eyes on the computer and began to type the case. People have their own aspirations. Even if I don't study and go home to be a housewife, it has nothing to do with me. Signal the nurse to call the next patient. Dr. Chun, you have to be responsible for the child in my belly. The girl opened her mouth again. I guess she was young and a little scared, I thought to myself, so I comforted her. Don't worry, we are the first diagnosis responsibility system. And the first doctor to receive you will be responsible for your entire pregnancy. She lowered her head and laughed dryly twice, and the provocation in her eyes became more and more obvious. Dr. Chun, I mean this child is Mr. Ming's. Of course you have to be responsible. I suddenly looked up at her. She still looked at me with a smile. Looking from afar, there are 6 dishes and 1 soup on the table, as well as 2 glasses of red wine. Hearing the sound of me entering the door, Ming was taking out the dishes and chopsticks from the kitchen. Are you back? He arranged the dishes and chopsticks, wiped his apron, wiped his hands dry and gave me a hug. Our expert Chen is exhausted, isn't he? Well, there is an operation. I hung up my coat, changed my shoes and went into the house to wash my hands. He pulled out the stool, asked me to sit down and then began to serve the soup. Shall we? I ordered the cake. Today is our 20th wedding anniversary. We will cut it together later. He looked at me spoiledly just like before. I lowered my head, bit my lip and stirred the soup in the bowl with a soup spoon. Today is the 20th anniversary of the anniversary. The gift you gave is really great. Ming, shall we have a baby? His chopsticks stopped in midair, turned to look at me and asked puzzledly, Why did you suddenly say this? What do you want the child to do? I just want to be with you. The child will disturb us. I'm 40 years old. In a few years, if you regret it, I won't be able to give birth. I'm testing him. Ming's eyes flashed and he touched the tip of his nose. He came over and hugged me and put his chin on the top of my hair. Today is the anniversary. Let's not talk about this. Okay. Promised him. After finishing the meal absent-mindedly, he slowly washed the dishes with a dishcloth. He stretched out a hand and took the bowl in my hand. It's already clean. Ming raised the bowl and shook it in front of my eyes. Shall we? What's on your mind? It's not easy to hide the emotional fluctuations of the pillow person for many years. I'm a little tired. The drops of water on the edge of the bowl reflected the light in the kitchen, which made me dizzy. He wrapped his ring around my waist. I'll press it for you. After finishing the words, his fingers began to swim on my back, and the hot breath hit my ear. The warm humidity comes from the earlobe. He said in a breath, Shall we relax and you won't be tired? He buried his head in my neck and kissed me. On the day of the wedding anniversary, my husband's lover actually asked me to help her do an obstetric examination 39,103. Ming, what did you look like when you pressed the girl under you? Do you still remember that you have a wife? My stomach feels nauseous. No, it's so dirty. He pushed him away directly. I have to rush a paper today. You go to bed first. Run to the study in a hurry. Yu Guang suddenly looked at Mingru's relieved expression. It turned out that it was all acting just now. 2. Director Chun? Director Chun. The colleague next to me is calling me. You go to the venue first. I'll be there soon. I gave them a proper smile, but my eyes fell on the front not far ahead. It's Ming and the girl that day. I was here to attend the academic conference, but I didn't expect to meet him outside the hotel venue. After sending my colleague away, I took a breath, calmed down and dialed his phone. What are you doing? I pretended not to care and asked. Shall we? He said casually. I'm at school and I have classes later. I saw his fingers caressing the girl's face and tying a strand of hair behind her ear. The girl took his arm, met his eyes and raised her face. Professional course? I continued to ask, but the mobile phone was pressed harder and harder. There were a few delicate smiles along the microphone. He put his index finger on the girl's mouth and made a shoo gesture. Yes, it's almost time. I won't talk to you. He was impatient to deal with me and wanted to close the line. Wait, I stopped him. Su Ming, do you still remember what you said when you proposed? The sound on the other side of the phone suddenly became quiet and there was no sound. More than 20 years ago, Su Ming's face was full of innocence and shyness. The seaside is sprinkled with soft sunshine, and the trees and houses are plated with gold. When the orange sphere on the sea level jumped out of the water, he knelt on one knee, holding a ring in his hand, and his eyes were full of expectation. Shall we marry me? The crowd watching the sunrise was boiling. The sunrise in the distance was obviously not as touching as the marriage proposal in front of them. Everyone was following, some whistled, some applauded, and more people were shouting loudly to cheer for Su Ming. Promise him. Promise him quickly. In front of so many people, he said in an extremely serious tone that I said, I, Su Ming, will never disappoint Chen Xiaohui in this life. If I disappoint her, I will be rejected by everyone. The other end of the phone was quiet for a long time, until I saw Su Ming standing there in a daze. The girl grabbed her arm and shook it gently. He straightened his chest, straightened up, and gave me a positive answer. I remember. Just remember. I finally glanced at the two people in front of me and closed the thread. Su Ming, you made a sincere vow back then, and I will make it come true. The showdown between the three came faster than expected. When Lan made a fuss in my clinic, her fetal position was unstable, and she had mild bleeding symptoms. She said that I was a quack and deliberately harmed her. I asked her to restrain herself. This is a public place. Don't delay other patients. She didn't listen and was very emotional. She directly called Su Ming and shouted directly in front of me, Husband, come on, the doctor is going to harm our baby. Husband, come on. This doctor is so bad. As soon as Su Ming pushed the door open, Wen Lan immediately threw herself into his arms and began to coquettishly. Husband, I was fine before. It was because I took the medicine she prescribed that my stomach hurt. While complaining, she peeked at me with that slightly smug look. Su Ming was confused by her, and didn't notice that I was in the room at all. He hurriedly comforted her and patted her back. Don't cry, Lan Lan, I'll ask the doctor for you. When he raised his head and his eyes fell on my face in front of the consultation table, there was obvious resistance in his eyes. Obviously, he was not ready to face me. Xiaohui, he stammered. Why? It's you. Wen Lan opened her eyes wide and kept patrolling between me and Su Ming with an innocent face. Suddenly, she broke away from Su Ming, leaned against the wall weakly, covered her cheeks with her hand, and kept shaking her head. Mr. Su, I didn't know she was your wife. Mr. Su, I didn't mean it. Her tears fell to the ground like no money. It's like a delicate and innocent peach blossom in spring. As long as I say a word loudly, it will go with the wind. Looking at Wen Lan's performance, I squeezed my pin's fingers tighter and tighter. Su Ming moved first. He pulled her up, held her in his arms and gently stroked her hair, as if to a fragile and beautiful porcelain. It's not your fault, Lan Lan, it's not your fault. My stomach was upside down, and I felt that I was about to lose control. I frowned. The finger knocked on the table. Professor Su, please take your students away. If you don't worry about me, you can change the hospital. There is no problem with my medical instructions. Xiaohui, listen to my explanation. Su Ming reacted from Wen Lan's gentle countryside, and subconsciously wanted to defend himself. The person in his arms didn't give him a chance and cried and shouted. She did it on purpose. Teacher Su, she must have done it on purpose. She wants to kill our baby. Mr. Su, don't you want Lan Lan or our baby anymore? You can't do this to me. I gave you everything. Su Ming opened his mouth and wanted to say something to me, but when Lan grabbed the collar of his clothes and cried and made a fuss, unforgiving, I said coldly, Miss Wen, you destroy other people's families and are afraid of retaliation. Don't think everyone is as shameless as you. When Lan blushed with shame and raised her finger to me. You. I waved her hand and glared at Su Ming. Take her away. Don't delay others' medical see. Let's talk about the rest when we get home. This is mainly office, outside the door are the patients who came for me. You scumbags, don't delay other people's medical seeing. I am a doctor, and being responsible for patients is always the first. 3. Su Ming has been waiting for me. He hesitated and didn't know how to open his mouth. I didn't look at him. I went straight to the bar, poured a glass of water, stared at the water in my hand and said, Don't drag the mud with water. He suddenly became a little annoyed and slapped the table, shaking the vase left and right. Chen Xiaohui, I really hate your appearance. Can you deal with it calmly when the sky falls? No matter what I do, you won't care. Who said no? I grabbed him in my heart, and the water cup was pinched and squeaked. I endured not to hit it on the ground. Once the head started, he couldn't stop. Su Ming kept complaining. He said that he hated me for always putting work first. He was never as important as my patients. No matter what, I would rush to the hospital immediately with a phone call. He hates that I always look calm and self-controlled, as if everything is in my heart, and there is nothing worth my particular excitement. He said gently that Wenlan was a simple little girl. He quarreled with me that day and was depressed after drinking too much. Wenlan clumsily comforted him. He vowed to be responsible for her, and not to let her lose her beautiful longing for love. Finally, he came to a conclusion. As your husband, you really don't feel like being a man. It turns out that in your eyes, more than 20 years of experience is not as good as the comfort of the little girl's gentle voice. The care in your heart is not as good as a gentle sentence of Mr. Su. I was so angry with him that I wanted to laugh. What did he say back then? Shall we? I appreciate your independence most. You are capable and not dependent on men. You are very charming when you treat patients calmly in the clinic. What about now? He forgot it all. These are all my sins. I am not gentle enough, not considerate enough to pay attention to him. I am too calm and too work-loving to put him first in everything, which makes Mr. Su disappointed in his married life. I didn't satisfy your machismo. Can Wenlan make you revive the man style? What the hell? I'm so blind that I will promise to marry you. All I got it. He put the cup heavily on the table, and the water splashed all over the table. Don't talk to me about your touching love anymore. I interrupted him. Divorce, you leave the house clean. Chun Shaoi, why do you want me to get out of the house? You are the one who is at fault. You should clean up and leave the house. That's the punishment for your betrayal of marriage. I saluted him in return. Fault party? Are you right? Su Ming hit the back. I'm wrong again. I didn't make the female student's belly bigger. This man is simply shameless. Don't use your vulgar values to measure me and Lanlan. I am her first man, and I must be responsible for her. The first man? I sneered in my heart. Responsible? Su Ming, how dare you say it? He is like a hairy boy defending love. The old house is on fire. It's really deadly. I didn't stop you from being responsible for her. You leave the house cleanly, and I will sign the divorce now. The common property of husband and wife, I will give you everything. He choked his neck and slammed the door angrily. Finally, it's exposed. What a great love, living at this age. Property is what you want to fight for, right? Alel, let's spend it. I think her belly is getting bigger and bigger, and she will be more and more anxious. When the child is on the ground and can't register for the household registration, you will naturally come to beg me. Before Su Ming came to see me again, my parents-in-law came to the door first. One of the two people sang red face and the other sang white face. The father-in-law said, let me do well and pity their old Su family. The two of them are so old that they want a grandson. My mother-in-law was so resentful that she blamed me for so many years of no children. She said hatefully, don't think I don't know. It was you who forced Su Mingding back then. For a moment, I was distracted and remembered the report sheet that I had secretly hidden. We have been married for 2 or 3 years. We didn't deliberately use contraception, but we didn't have children for a long time. The doctor's professional sensitivity reminded me that 2 people need to be examined. I tried to find a way to get Su Ming's sample, and as expected, I had sperm. Holding his test report, I was lost in thought. I could only carefully test his attitude first. Is it necessary to have a child? Su Ming probably thought it was my problem. He behaved generously and said that it was okay to let nature take its course, and there was nothing wrong with Dingke. I quietly hid the report and never mentioned it again. My parents-in-law have always thought that Dingke was my choice. I'm not afraid of their misunderstanding. Su Ming is a man, and sometimes his face is bigger than the sky. Besides the husband and wife, I carry something for him. What's the point? As long as he has me in his heart. But now I regret it because my mother-in-law scolded indiscriminately. Chicken who can't lay eggs, hurry up and make room for others. Evacate the place? Of course, Tung immediately. You don't need to urge. As long as Su Ming pays the price. Mom, I'm calling you for the last time today. I agreed to divorce and let Su Ming talk to me by himself. People in their 40s still hide behind their parents when they encounter things, which makes people look down on them. I gave an ultimatum. After only a week, Su Ming really came back to see me. He looked up and down, and his spirit was very bad. He was usually gentle and elegant, but he suddenly became cowardly. Looking at his appearance, a sadness surged out of reason. How could I waste 20 years on such a person? He didn't notice my scrutiny at all and asked me directly, how on earth can I get a divorce? It's clear that Wenlan can't wait. Little girl, you always have to wear a wedding dress as a bride. If you drag on any longer, your belly is too big. I didn't let go, but emphasized again that divorce is okay, and he must give up the joint property of husband and wife. After endless talk, Su Ming agreed to leave the cash and the house. He only needed the small house in the suburbs. Thinking about the couple for many years, He softened for a moment. I agreed. Unavidedly, after Wenlan knew it, she came to make a big muss with her mother. She said that I had invested the joint property of the husband and wife. The old lady scolded people, which was not ambiguous at all. It's still a doctor. Looking at the human model dog, a stomach is full of bad water. Didn't you usually get enough red envelopes? So greedy for money. Is that money your own? What a shameless, useless old woman. Don't even look at yourself. If you can't keep a man, you will miss the money. Their mothers clamored to let the court rule and divide the property equally. Okay, I'll wait for you. I decided to take action first. Enduring his anger and disgust, he sorted out the evidence of Su Ming's money transfer of money for Wenlan, including hotel opening, daily transfer, and gift-giving expenses. I first filed a lawsuit with the court to recover the money Su Ming spent on her from Wenlan. The summons was sent to Wenlan's school, and someone whispered wherever she went. She got into a lawsuit. The rumors of her classmates made her unable to stay on campus at ease. She was furious. Chun Xiaowei, why did you sue me? I glanced at her. The money Su Ming spent for you is all ours. Of course, I have the right to recover it. You are so despicable. Mr. Su and I really love each other. Shrugging my shoulders, I said generously, don't worry, I'll leave you the money for your marriage. But, I stared into her eyes. I will get back every penny he spends on you during my marriage. You. Wenlan's face turned red with anger, and her lips trembled. Suddenly, she grabbed the vase on the table and threw it at me. Unaften to dodge, the fragments that exploded in the vase collapsed to the calf. Hiss. I squatted down to check the wound. I haven't stood up yet. It hurts so much. There was a howl from the opposite side, and Wenlan's face changed greatly. She kept sliding down with her stomach covered. Blood flowed down her thighs. It's broken and the tire is moving. 5. I didn't care about the injury on my leg, so I quickly took her up and sent her to the hospital. Don't worry about it. She covered her stomach and pushed me desperately, cursing. You don't have to pretend to be kind. I had a headache because of her. I shouted at her. Shut up. Do you want one corpse and 2 lives? Wenlan was frightened by me and immediately shut up. He obediently cooperated with me and went to the hospital together. Seeing that she was pushed into the operating room, her highly tense nerves relaxed. The needle-like pain came from the calf. He smiled bitterly and limped to the seat in the corridor. When my colleague saw my embarrassed appearance, he asked me curiously, Director Chan, is this girl your relative? No, she is pregnant with my husband's child. My voice was not loud, but the words were clearly transmitted to the ears of the people around me. They looked at me in disbelief with a calm face. I waved my hand and signaled them that I was fine and hurry up. Wenlan's mother came faster than Su Ming. As soon as she saw me, she cursed. Your heart is so vicious. I just want to kill my daughter and grandson. My poor daughter. I can't open my eyes. Bully us honest people. Su Ming, you have no conscience. Lan is going to die for you. She sat on the ground, patting her thighs and shouting like singing. I also shed tears at the right time. However, it didn't have the expected effect. The people next to her looked at her performance indifferently. She took the hand of a sister-in-law next to her and complained. Sister-in-law, please judge. My innocent big girl deliberately angered my girl. She wants her to die. The sister-in-law quickly withdrew her hand in disgust. Is your girl innocent? The one in Dongguan Foot Washing City is more innocent. TSK, be a junior, present world reward. That is, people are originally kind-hearted. If I meet her, I don't care about her. I'm going to set off firecrackers next to me right away to celebrate Xiao San's death. That's it. That's it. The family members in the corridor nodded one after another. Seeing that the audience was gone, she got up from the ground and stared at me with hatred. Wenlan was in an emergency situation. The doctor poked his head out of the operating room and asked his family where they were. It is recommended to have a cesarean section immediately. Her mother was stunned and began to cry again. Her miserable girl sighed 3 times. The doctor was in a hurry. He didn't care that the woman was still splashing on the ground and urged the family to make a decision quickly. She looked at me with great embarrassment. Director Chan, you are an expert. This situation can't be delayed. With a sigh, I called Su Ming and asked him to make up his mind quickly. He was a little flustered and his voice trembled. He didn't know what to do. Suddenly he asked me, shall we, in view of the 20 years of love between husband and wife, tell me what to do? I sneered twice and glanced at the woman sitting on the ground and glared at me. I'm afraid your future mother-in-law doesn't think so. As I spoke, I turned on my mobile phone so that the doctor could hear his decision. Shall we? I believe in your professional level and your character. Su Ming's voice came out of the speaker. Before he could say his next sentence, the woman rushed over and shouted at the phone. Su Ming, you beast. You are crazy. Unexpectedly, I asked her. She will kill Lan Lan. Don't listen to her. Mom. Mom. Calm down. Call Xiaowei and listen to her. You beast. I want to kill Lan Lan. When Lan's mother couldn't listen to him at all and shouted regardless, You're going to cut a knife in Lan Lan's stomach. I came to a conclusion in the voice that Su Ming could hear. Dissect. He heard it and quickly expressed his opinion to the surgeon about accepting a cesarean section, and he immediately went to the hospital. The surgeon got the conclusion and immediately went back to the operating room. As soon as Su Ming arrived at the hospital, when Lan's mother rushed over and scolded him. She lost her conscience and made her daughter suffer like this. She also had to cooperate with her wife to open and on when Lan's stomach. Before he could say anything, the light in the operating room was out, and the midwife came out to inform that it was a boy, and the mother and son were safe. I took a breath and was ready to leave. He saw my movements and pushed away Wenlan's mother, who was cursing in front of him, and his eyes fell on my bloody and dry calf. Your legs! Wenlan smashed it with a vase. He saw me limping forward, grabbed my wrist and refused to let go. Xiaowei, let me take you home. Let go. I looked at him coldly. I don't need you to send me. Su Ming took a deep look at me. Thank you for sending her here. You saved her and the child's life. I'm a doctor. Looking straight at the person in front of me, I said again. No matter who she is, I will save her. But I won't give up what I deserve. You ask her to prepare for the lawsuit. That's all you can go. Wait. Su Ming shouted behind him. He handed me a debt note with his signature and handprint on it. The amount was just the arrears I claimed from the court and asked Wenlan to return. I don't have so much cash on hand for the time being. Please collect the arrears and I will pay it back, he said. After browsing the content on the debt note, I nodded. Okay, I will withdraw the complaint and wish you happiness. 6. 2 months later, Wenlan came to see me with his child and his ex-in-laws. She handed me an invitation like the queen of the stars and the moon in the posture of a winner. I took the invitation but I didn't even look at it. I just put it in a ball and threw it into the trash can. She looked at my movements and smiled sweetly. Even if I throw away the invitation, Su Ming is still mine. Dr. Chan, Director Chan, are you not willing? What if your career is successful? It's not that even a man can't keep it. She mocked me openly. Lan Lan, don't talk to her so much. It's bad luck. The former mother-in-law held the child and said, if she hadn't delayed Su Ming, I would have held my grandson long ago. I glanced at the 3 people opposite and directly took Su Ming's test report on the child's quilt. Look clearly, Su Ming can't give birth at all. You two are raising children for others. There are no grandchildren in your lives. The face of the former parents-in-law suddenly changed greatly. When Lan's proud expression froze, I stepped forward and said to her, you know best whether the child is Su Ming's or not. You don't have much blood. When Lan denied it loudly and couldn't hide the panic in her tone, she grabbed her mother-in-law's sleeve and said, Mom, don't believe her. She is deliberately provoking separation. She is jealous of me. I snorted coldly and was a little impatient. I didn't want to waste time with this kind of person. I just made it clear. You also lied to Su Ming, the nerd, and said that you gave it to him for the first time. Your cervix is so loose that you don't know how many times you have had an abortion and curettage. During the obstetric examination, he also told me that he had no pregnancy history. Who do you think you are lying to? I'm an obstetrician. When Lan stood there in a daze, she didn't expect that I would have known for a long time. Realizing that Su Ming's parents were still present, she quickly reacted and said with her neck, the child is Su Ming's. You slander me. Didn't slander you? Just do a paternity test. I put my arms around me and gave them a reliable suggestion. When Lan was anxious and quickly persuaded them. Dad, Mom, don't listen to her instigation. It's not good for the child to do identification. The baby is just 1 month old. This is your precious grandson. The father-in-law ignored her, shook his hand, and looked carefully at the slightly yellowed report which said, Aspermia, infertility. He burst into tears. Seeing the father-in-law's appearance, the mother-in-law suddenly stuffed the child in her arms to Wenlan, pulled her hair and cursed. Good. You little bitch, you lied to us. My old face has been lost by you. Our Su family won't let you in. I looked at the farce in front of me coldly. Wenlan was pushed back and forth by 2 angry old men, like a defeated chicken. He soared and wanted to talk, but he didn't dare to speak. Su Ming and Wenlan tore their faces apart. Of course, the wedding was cancelled. Wenlan said that he played with women and asked him to compensate. Su Ming naturally did not follow. He scolded Wenlan for being like a snake and a scorpion and made a wild seed to deceive him. The 2 of them made a lot of noise. It is said that Su Ming was blocked in the office by Wenlan's mother's family several times and couldn't get out. The teachers and students of the whole school are watching jokes. Soon the matter of the two was posted on the internet. Parents were very indignant, condemning the teacher for taking advantage of his position to point out on the female students, and asked the school to severely punish them. The school reacted quickly, and Su Ming was suspended for investigation. However, it's all someone else's business. My senior in the UK sent me an invitation, saying that he saw a paper of mine on The Lancet. His research center was recruiting visiting scholars. The research direction coincided and asked me if I was interested. After a long consideration, I decided to accept his invitation. Those unbearable things have passed. In another place there will be better things waiting for me. When Su Ming knocked on the door, I was packing my luggage. He stood at the door, with a shaggy beard and a wound on his face, as if he had lost his soul. "Shall we? Did you know for a long time that the child is not mine?" He opened his mouth sullenly. I ignored him and continued to move my hand. Seeing that I didn't answer, he grabbed my wrist and said, "Shall we? Are you listening?" I sneered. "Don't you want a child? What does it have to do with who it is? There are so many orphans waiting for adoption in the world. Don't you love Wenlan? That's her child, isn't it? Shall we?" He raised his tone and brought out his bone-graving hatred. "Wenlan is a liar. She approached me at the beginning just to make me a cheap father. I was deceived by her. It has nothing to do with me." I didn't hesitate to interrupt his anger. "Mr. Su, if you are okay, you can leave." I pointed to the door and signaled him not to disturb me and get out of here. He looked at the door and didn't move. 7. He suddenly ran behind me and hugged me. "Shall we? You still love me, don't you?" As he said, he came over. His mouth pressed against the back of my neck, and the wet touch made me shiver. He was stunned and was still saying, "I will change it, let's remarry." I struggled hard in his arms. "Let go. Shall we forgive me, okay? I will never provoke others again. I only love you." His left hand pinched my waist, and his right hand reached to his chest, trying to unbutton my shirt, and his movements became more and more reckless. His elbow pounded his lower abdomen hard, quickly broke away at the moment of his pain, raised his hand and slapped him in the face, warning him, "Su Ming, we are divorced. If you mess around again, I'll call the police." He covered his face and squatted down in pain with a choked voice. "Shall we? I miss you so much. You don't know that Wenlan and her relatives block my door every day, and her mother's brothers beat me. They said that if I didn't satisfy them, they would sue me for rape." Su Ming, who was squatting on the ground, shrank into a ball, like a bereaved dog. He was about to collapse and muttered, "What should I do? What should I do?" I tidied up my shirt, bent down, looked at the garbage and said softly in his ear, "It's all your own search." The rogue methods of the one family made Su Ming, the teacher in the ivory tower, helpless. They blocked every place where Su Ming would appear, scolding him for abandoning everything and making other people's stomachs bigger. Su Ming can't work at all, and he can't defend himself. He didn't even dare to leave the house, because as long as he appears outside, he will be greeted by abuse and beating. My parents-in-law, who wanted to lose face all their lives, lost their face this time, and they were both so angry that they were both hospitalized. It was not until Su Ming transferred the small house in the suburbs to Wenlan, disposed of the house of his former parents-in-law, and gave her another sum of money. The one family gave up and reluctantly let him go. Now Su Ming is shaky, just like standing on the edge of the cliff. Before leaving the country, I reached out and pushed him again. Take out the promissory note he wrote to me before and file a lawsuit in court to repay the debt. I know that he is penniless now and can't come out at all. The one family caused Su Ming to have sequelae and dare not appear in any public place. He did not even participate in the trial. After the sentence was pronounced in absentia, Su Ming was included in the list of discredited people. The fact that he and Wenlan were so ugly that in order to calm the anger of his parents, the school expelled him directly. No one knows where he went. A year later, the agent informed me to return to China to deal with the property. After signing the contract smoothly, I thought that my brother was tired of asking for leave to accompany me back, so I planned to invite him to have a meal together. I didn't think that there was a long queue at the entrance of the parking lot just in time for the evening rush hour in the city. "Sir, do you need to stop?" The parking man in a blue vest bowed politely and knocked on the window. The familiar voice made me, sitting in the co-pilot, subconsciously turn my head. The parking man standing outside the car saw my face clearly and froze there with his fingers bent. Then, he immediately pressed down the hat on his head, covered half of his face, and ran away as if to escape. "What's the matter with this man?" A series of actions made the driving brother feel strange and muttered softly, "I still want him to help me stop. It's really inexplicable." I looked at the direction of Su Ming's escape and said quietly, "Who said no, inexplicable person? Su Ming, you also have today. If I had known today, why did I have to do it at the beginning? It's over."